There was an old Nez Perce chief called, I guess, Mohala. And the government went to him and asked him to take his young men and go out and grow grass and cut hay and sell it. And he said, "You want me to stab my mother in her breast?" He was referring to the ground, the earth. And he says, "Then you want me to grow her hair and cut it and then sell it?" And he said, "You ask me to ask my young men to work. But if they work, they can't dream, and wisdom comes from dreams." We dreamed of this, and by dreaming I mean we were up there at the training and we said, well, if we don't get funded, we're going to do it anyhow. We had it in our mind that we were going to do it some way. We didn't know how, but we were going to do it. Well, luckily we got funded, but I think we would have done something. And if the people have the ability to dream about these things and say that no matter how difficult it is, we can do it. And it can be done. And one person becomes two, and two becomes three, and then you got a whole legion of people out there that are helping and supporting.
When I went up to Blue Bay, I found that the setting up there is such that whatever you want to do up there, it just gets enhanced.
A lot of the power and strength of Blue Bay is in fact where it is, and that there certainly is a special kind of spirit at Blue Bay.
And I experienced something up there that I can't experience down here in the street in town, or in my office, or even in my own seclusion in my bedroom. The whole setting up there is different, and it's and I've seen where it's helped many people.
The Salish and Kootenai tribes are committed to change. This is evidenced by the transformation of the old tribally owned bar, restaurant, and resort located on the east shore of Flathead Lake. It is now the Blue Bay Healing Center, a model program in the nation for the prevention and treatment of alcohol and drug abuse. The tribes have come full circle from serving alcohol to healing alcoholism.
The tribe was feeling like they were not reaching the people they wanted to, and that they also were putting a lot of resource to the same group of people all of the time, and wanted to reach more people and wanted to reach people at a younger age. And so they closed down the detox center and said to the administration that was running the alcohol program, we want a community-based program. And a staff of people began that process of trying to design a community-based program, which was really a big job to do, because no one was doing that. There wasn't anything to look at, to copy after, or pattern after. At that time, I sat through lots of meetings with people just talking about, you know, what's the philosophy, what's the belief, what do we need to do? And eventually the outcome was a community-based alcoholism program with counselors in each community, and people, a big prevention component with lots of people working in schools and lots of resource going to schools and trying to educate children, and less of an emphasis upon primary alcoholism treatment, more emphasis upon treating family members and treating children and educating community. And from that just grew a stronger and stronger belief and commitment about treating not only those people who are abusing chemicals, but those people who were affected by using chemicals. And also at that time, the beginning of talking about that's us, that's not them, that's us. All of us had been affected in some way by someone's chemical use. And as tribal members, almost all of us have been. And from that, it just sort of grew and grew, and in Blue Bay happened and was formed from a lot of those beliefs about treating families and treating people who were affected by people's use, treating people early, treating people when they're young, focusing on strengths people had, helping people rebuild, empowering people, all of those beliefs. And I think kind of, I don't know if it's core or one of the important beliefs in that is that it had to be us too. It couldn't be something that we sat back and designed for them out there to do. We had to do that too. And we had to be willing to participate. We had to be willing to model for the community.
One doesn't have to look very far to find evidence of a change in thinking, a change in what's acceptable as far as the use of drugs and alcohol amongst tribal people. I think one can look to tribal government, I think one can look in the communities, and one can see a change. Whether that's attributable to Blue Bay, I think that's pretty hard to say. But I think it's easy to say that Blue Bay has been part of that process. But I think Blue Bay came about as a result of a new awakening here, if you will, or a new realization, if you will, amongst the people themselves, that the abuse of drugs and alcohol is a terribly destructive situation for us, and that answers need to be found. And I think the answers we're finding have to do with enabling people to help themselves rather than fixing the problem for them. And I think that's been the most exciting result from Blue Bay, is the fact that it's allowed community members to participate in that process of finding answers and finding solutions and finding ways to help people help themselves, rather than developing fixes, rather than developing ways to help people with these kinds of problems. It's allowed people to think about, how do you help people help themselves?
Certainly within the Indian community, one of our biggest obstacles that I feel that we have is lack of self-worth. We have a rather poor image of ourselves, and it's I guess you'd say it's crammed down our throat from the very beginning. And one of the things that I see that we can do to overcome that is get into programs such as this, to say, yes, I am worth something. Yes, I can be a contributing factor, and yes, I can do these skills that people say that I'm incapable of doing. I can prove to them that I can do it.
Well, I think that the way that you overcome this disease is to raise your self-esteem. That people don't choose to check out of the world if they feel good about themselves. And when you're drunk or when you're high, you're checking out. And if you feel good about who you are as a person, you don't want to do that.
What I find happening at Blue Bay, where everything seems to be focused, is that they want to bring that power from within, to bring it out and to be able to look at it individually and say, yeah, I am capable of doing this. And those programs that they do up there, I think, do that very well.
Growth and change, and allowing yourself to change and experience new life behaviors and try new survival skills and experience life in a new way. And as we did that, and I think we did that as a program, more so not only on an individual basis, but everybody in the program began to see the need to not only give up the booze and the drugs, but also to get into new ways of looking at life and experiencing life. That led us to the concept about looking at the whole person in balance. That it's easy to give up the alcohol and drugs. That's the easiest part. The hard part is learning how to live your life after that.
All Blue Bay staff must participate in the caring for the caregiver component. This is one of the program's unique strengths. The staff participation in these awareness programs prepare them to be understanding of themselves and to be more effective in dealing with others and their addiction problems.
You know, because everybody thinks you sober up and that's it. Well, no, that's not it. I mean, that's just the beginning. you know, then is when you have to start working your steps. You know, what are you doing with making amends? You know, I didn't realize you had to make amends. You know, I mean, I sobered up. I thought that was that's all there was to it. But you have amends that, you know, there's lots of things that you keep inside of you, you know, and you got to get rid of it. Otherwise, you know, if you continue to go on like that, eventually, I personally believe eventually that'll cause relapse. You know, if you don't get all this stuff out of your system and make amends with these people that you've had faults with or whatever, you're going to allow it to drag you down. You know, that's one of the things that I've learned in my training with the alcohol program, is if you keep bagging things, pretty soon the bag's going to get too heavy for you to drag, and, you know, something's going to happen.
One of the things they attempted to do at Blue Bay was treat the whole individual and not just the symptoms or the problems that are evidenced by the abuse of alcohol and drugs.
So then we decided to move more towards working with families, that we knew that people that began a recovery process needed to have the support of their families, and particularly in Native communities where our families are so tied together that one person couldn't break out of that system and recover if everybody didn't really look at how they were contributing to and enabling the person in their disease. We really believed that the key to recovery from this disease for Native people was to engage the entire reservation community into the healing process, that all of us somehow had been affected by the disease, and that all of us deserved treatment for it. All of us deserved to recognize how we were affected and how our behavior was affected by that, and allowed an opportunity to change that behavior in a more healthy, happy manner. So that ultimately what we were looking at was allowing people an opportunity, providing them with an opportunity to change towards, from dysfunction to function, from unhealthy to healthy behavior. All along, though, very much realizing that we also wanted to prevent kids from entering the cycle of addiction, but base that philosophy that the treatment component and the prevention component needed to come together. That the best way to keep kids from drinking or prevent kids from using alcohol or drugs was to have healthy role models in their lives. We knew that the tribe had wonderful role models. There were wonderful people that could serve as role models for our youth, but they weren't getting connected to the kids that needed them. So the program needed to move in that direction.
The activities are real intermixed with trying to bring messages to people and learning to people, but they're real intermixed with the whole concept and belief about teaching people how to just be with one another sober, and how to recreate and have fun sober, and how as families to come together and do those things without any chemicals involved. And I think that's an incredibly powerful message for children.
Well, the motorcycle run, the motorcycle poker run was a way out from what we do. We just asked people to be in the motorcycle poker run and to pledge 1 day of sobriety. We had about 65 motorcyclists. Next year we'll probably have about 200 motorcyclists. From that, as an example, we said, let's have a river float trip. A float trip on the river where people can spend a day floating from Buffalo Bridge down to Sloan's Bridge and to enjoy the river and to understand it, and everyone was real excited about that. So one gave rise to another one. We have, in the official treatment program, we'll bring in families, man, wife, children, family week. We bring them all together and we talk. They talk to them about their problems and that, and they begin we're all looking at each other sober, and they begin to understand. Never been done. I know those families probably never talk to each other sober about real important issues, and they get to do that. There's an awful lot of grief that's left at Blue Bay. A lot of people share an awful lot of feelings there, and they leave their grief at Blue Bay. So we do, well, the cultural camp is up at Blue Bay this week. The Upward Bound is at Blue Bay this week. They're going to have a song fest starting tonight at Blue Bay. We can't work with the mental health until we get the physical health in shape. And I think we'll be going toward, well, we're sponsoring fun runs. You know, we have this next weekend we're having a celebration of sobriety. We're going to have a 2 and 5K run. Have lots of games down there that are physical activities.
Although the educational and support programs presented at Blue Bay use current methods and theories, the wisdom of the traditional ways and cultural heritage of the people is also incorporated.
I'm very, very thankful that my ancestors figured out a way to medicate all of the pain that they had, because without that we wouldn't be in the 1990s. That we can now move into a new direction. We can now change the way we look at alcohol and drugs. We don't need them anymore in our lives, because we can make new decisions and we can learn new survival skills and be stronger, better, healthier, and happier people as a result of that. But in no way would I ever condemn or judge the generations before me that chose that path. I believe that they did the best they could, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for them, and very respectful and very appreciative for what they've done.
What I believe Blue Bay does really well by utilizing the expertise and the knowledge that tribal elders have, and also utilizing the expertise that cultural and traditional leaders have. And I feel strongly about that. That's a big part of why they have been so successful, because of their taking the time to really nurture those relationships along. And that's not always easy to do. Tribal elders don't always necessarily tell you what you want to know. You don't sit down with them for an hour and they tell you what you want to know. It's a process of really nurturing relationships and being with them and going back and going back and going back many times before you get the direction or information. And I believe Blue Bay has done that really well, and I believe that's really core to a lot of their success.
What happens here? When we get groups of people addressing various issues, okay? When we set up a workshop, in those workshops, we bring about scheduling in cultural awareness, cultural identity, and what the drugs and alcohol does to destroy that, and how you can regain that by utilizing the resources in the community of the reservation, and plugging them people into those resources to continue so that they can have a support system in continuing to build their strength through culture, their strength through they want to continue in education. That's what takes place. They identify where their dysfunction is coming from. We help them, give them the tools to identify those dysfunctions, and then it's up to them for the tribal member to bring that out and to go forth and to bring their identity into them, or their culture, or what they want to learn again. That's a process that happens so far here at Blue Bay.
The reward for the efforts of the community and staff who created Blue Bay is a brighter future for the Flathead Reservation.
you know, the problems presented to mental health staff and to alcoholism staff are always incredible problems. They're always very complex. They're always involving lots of people. And generally things are pretty chaotic. And as a therapist, I often feel overwhelmed, inadequate, like, boy, you know, what in the world do we think we're doing here? And Blue Bay is a part of what keeps me invested, of saying this really works. You know, things really can work. People really can make changes. I can make changes, and people can make changes. And it doesn't have to be grueling and painful all of the way. There's a lot of fun and affirmation and reaffirming that can go on at that time too.
I think the people of Blue Bay have done an excellent job of staying the course, if you will, because I think it's terribly difficult to operate a program where the expectations are not as clear-cut as operating a treatment facility might be. And I think they've weathered some misunderstanding from people who saw it as a treatment facility, who saw it as a place they could send their kids, for example, to get fixed. And I think when it became clear that that's not the kind of facility it was going to be, I think there were some real serious questions raised about it. But they stayed the course, and I think they've been successful at what it is that, at least in my mind, we set out to do there. And that was run a short-term program that would allow people to explore different options and different ways to attack a problem that's been here for many, many years, and nobody has found a very successful way to deal with it so far. And so I think that the staff have done a really good job, and I think we have a tremendous resource there now because they've had the opportunity to experience this kind of a process.
So what we're looking at, what our hope is that someday we will work ourselves out of a job, and that someday that we can overcome alcohol and substance abuse in the current generation, and we'll have worked enough with the adolescents and the children that they won't choose that journey for themselves, that they will choose a healthier survival skill, that they'll be able to go to their parents, that they'll be able to go to their aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas to get the support that they need to make good decisions in their lives, and that they won't feel the need to medicate with alcohol and drugs.
I've seen children, teenagers who have been involved in programs at Blue Bay, then later be like at community workshops or community kinds of meetings, and seen them get up and say things that I was just kind of floored by. You know, you hear teenagers and children talking about being sober and talking about, you know, the power of recreating and having fun with one another without chemicals. You know, gosh, 10, 11 years ago when I first began working here, you didn't hear teenagers do that very much at meetings. Occasionally you would hear adults, but not teenagers or children.
We certainly have a lot to be hopeful for when we start thinking about all the things that are happening with the alcohol program. Once we got a good program going, which was just recently, once we start doing that, I think all kinds of things start happening in communities. Of course, it's also nationwide too. I have to say that. But nationwide doesn't really concern me. When I talk about all the hopeful things that are happening, I'm mostly talking about Indian country. I can recall going to celebrations here on this reservation when it was just a drunken mess. And I can also remember going to other celebrations in other states and only going over there just to get drunk. And as far as the future at that time, I never thought about the future. I never thought about what was in coming up for me or my children or my grandchildren. Now that we've seen the horizon of sobriety and seen the things that we can do sober, oh gosh, there's all kinds of hope. I fully expect my grandchildren to be in almost a totally alcohol-free environment. I expect it. I think that's going to happen. Certainly their children will have it a lot better than what my parents had. And okay, we're talking maybe 5 generations here, but nevertheless, even in 5 generations, that's a considerable task to take, you know. So, oh yeah, hopefully, as far as hope is concerned, boy, there's just nothing but huge span of things out there where you just all kinds of possibilities. Where when alcohol was involved and so heavily involved, it was pretty hard to think of anything bright, futuristic. It's made a world of difference for me and my family, I know. And as I look around at my friends, they're saying the same thing. They're saying, boy, we finally got rid of that terrible thing, and now that we're rid of it, boy, this is a wonderful life. You know, this is outstanding. I didn't know it could be so good.
It's a continuous cry and a continuous joy to think that we've brought some sort of hope, focusing some of the attention on the young people is our best ray of hope. The young Native American people here, the young Salish and the young Kootenays, is our best ray of hope.
I want a quality life, not a quantity life. I want a quality life for my children. And I want to be with my children. And I want my children to be able to dream and to think. And as he said, from those dreams, wisdom will come.